you really, for me, all I could do was think about chances, right? Chance to be inconvenienced, chance to be told no, chance to celebrate, chance to be told something good, any chance, good or bad, when they're taken away, my gosh, you'd take them back in a heartbeat. You'd take them back in a heartbeat. And the chance to drive one of my kids to a sporting event and get stuck in traffic. I mean, whatever it is, the little things to the big things, you really put in perspective. And I wasn't great at that, before. I mean, I really was, and I still work at it today. But it was that moment in time that I thought, man, shame on me for not, for not thinking about every chance as an opportunity, good or bad. Every chance is an opportunity, and what you do with it is your choice. And I made a choice right then that I was going to, devote the rest of my life to doing good and trying to help others where I can, trying to be the best dad, trying to be the best husband and the best friend that I can be.
What happens when one of the best HR leaders in the world is suddenly told he may not live to see his kids grow up? Today's guest, Tim Huval, has lived through the kind of plot twist most of us only read about. Tim has been a CHRO, a business operator, a CAO, and now a board member. He's helped steer a major bank through the mortgage crisis. He's led one of the country's largest healthcare companies through massive change. On paper, it's a big career. But in 2018, all of that stopped. New Year's Eve, Tim lands in the hospital, misdiagnosis, Castleman's disease, a catastrophic reaction to medication. He loses 100% of his skin, ends up in a coma, on life support, dialysis, ventilator, feeding tube. His family is called in more than once to say goodbye. Last rites, more than once. And then he fights his way back. Learns to breathe without a vent, to walk again, to climb the stairs in his own home. And a few months later, he walks back into the office on a walker, then a cane, eventually stepping into the CAO role and leading the organization through COVID. This conversation is about what changes when you've been that close to the edge and get another shot. Tim and I dig into why chances, even the hard ones, the traffic jams, the tough conversations, are the real currency of a life and a career. How near death stripped away hesitation in his leadership. More truth-telling, more service, zero time for ego. What privilege to serve really looks like as a CHRO, an operator, and now as a board member. How HR needs to lead into AI, not brace against it. And why he sees it as an enabler of more meaningful work, not the end of work. If you care about leadership, about people, and about what HR should be in this next era, not just personnel, not just policy, but purpose, this episode will hit you. Stay with us. Tim's story will change how you think about work, about health, and about what you do with the chances you have. Tim, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to the conversation, Dan.
Yeah, and Tim, for listeners who know your story, I think they'll appreciate how much of a privilege it is to have this conversation. But you've lived an incredible life. You were a CHRO, business leader, CHRO again, CAO. You've been on boards. You've done it all. And along the way, you always had mission and purpose. Also had a pretty big wrench thrown in the way, which probably gave you more purpose and more of a mission than most. Would love to jump into it and have you tell the story.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and you're right. I mean, I've always been grounded in purpose, passion for the mission, and action. On the other side of that, right, which is the execution arm of it. But yeah, in 2018, Dan, as you know, I would have been the very end of 17, New Year's Eve. I found myself in the hospital, and fast forward to movie to December 18. I came home and had to rehab and learn a whole lot of things over again. But yeah, I was in the hospital, many different hospitals throughout that year, on life support a good portion of that year, not expected to live on multiple occasions, which to the point where the family came in, said their final goodbyes, had my final rites a few times. I was paralyzed. I was in a coma. So, on a vent for such a long time and on a feeding tube for such a long time. I came home in 18 at about 108 pounds, which is not the case today. I've been able to fight and put a little bit of that back on. But yeah, it was a pretty traumatic year where, you start to put things in perspective around, what you want to do for the next, hopefully 20 or 30, whatever you have left. But I went back to work. I went back to work that January. I was on a walker, which ended up moving to a cane through all the rehab that I was able to get. But I wanted to prove that I could heal on the field and give others permission to do the same thing, that face challenges, health challenges, or any type of challenge in life, because you realize how important we all need each other is. I mean, it's just critically important. The fact that I was faced with never, seeing my son play baseball again, or seeing my wife or my daughter grow up and have the beautiful grandbaby that I have today. Um, it's just something that really stings. It like knocks you over the head, so to speak. But I also learned about the power of support. During that period, Dan, our CEO, our board, our management team, I was with Humana at the time, as you know, unbelievable, unwavering support on all fronts for myself, for my family, knowing that there was a good chance they were kind of on watch, waiting for that word that I didn't make it. But they stuck with me, and that I'll never forget. I say often, Bruce is one of the finest human beings I know, and CEOs that I know. But I'll remember a whole lot about Bruce. I won't forget the day that he showed up in Cleveland Clinic to check on me, when I needed it most. When he showed up with with my wife and kids, and another board member, and several colleagues. So it's just those moments that matter, and you realize, you know what, we're here to do good work, and we're here to advance whatever function we're in at the time. But we're here for each other more than anything else, for those that we have the privilege to serve, and that's where I get my energy. So that's a a fairly short version of what happened in 2018, but that was the story.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to pause it for 1 second. My camera's moving, Tim. That was amazing. I just saw in the middle of the camera fall and interrupt while you're talking.
Yeah.
So Tim, let's rewind a little bit, because you shared a really powerful story, and you gave us the fast forwarded abridged version. But for context, for those who didn't know you at the time, that was end of 17, if I remember, in the bayou in Louisiana, and all of a sudden started having some really uncomfortable and bizarre health issues. In that time, so it was almost a year. You mentioned your family said goodbye. I know there were a few times where you were read last rites. A few times the family came and was preparing. Were you aware of what was happening the whole time?
No, I was in a coma. I was out. I don't recall any of that. I recall the pain. But before things got really, really bad, as they were trying to diagnose me, which eventually they did, with Castleman's disease. But what really sent me over the edge was I had an allergic reaction to one of the meds that caused Stephen Johnson's, which I ended up losing 100% of my skin, and that was probably one of the more painful things I've ever experienced in my life. I recall that as kind of the last memory, and then when I started to come to, I recognized that I was completely paralyzed and couldn't move. And to be honest with you, when I started really realizing where I was, it was a time that I needed to try to get off the vent and the trach, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to overcome, because the anxiety of not being dependent on a ventilator or a trach at the time, which I'd been on for a long time, was really difficult. And it was, I had to work like I've never worked at something to get off of that machine. But once I did, you sort of realized, there's hope for this. And I think I took my first step in probably November of that year, end of October, early November of 18. So I didn't realize at the moment when the end was near. I have a lot of memories in my head of things, but not that. But I do recall when I started to come to, and people started to explain, what I'd lived through. And I wasn't out of the woods then, but much more so than I was when things were really, really bad.
So, and the perseverance and the determination to get the trach out, to get out of bed. I know at some point you started thinking about the chances in life and the chances you wanted to have again. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, when you're laying there, yeah, unable to move, unable to speak, because of having both the trach and the vent, you really, for me, all I could do was think about chances, right? Chance to be inconvenienced, chance to be told no, chance to celebrate, chance to be told something good, any chance, good or bad, when they're taken away, my gosh, you'd take them back in a heartbeat. You'd take them back in a heartbeat, and the chance to drive one of my kids to a sporting event and be get stuck in traffic. I mean, whatever it is, the little things to the big things, you really, really put in perspective, and I wasn't great at that, before. I mean, I really was, and I still work at it today, but it was that moment in time that I thought, "Man, shame on me for not, for not thinking about every chance as an opportunity, good or bad." Every chance is an opportunity. And what you do with it is your choice. And I made a choice right then that I was going to, devote the rest of my life to doing good and trying to help others where I can, trying to be the best dad, trying to be the best husband and the best friend that I can be. And then the work thing, that's on the back end of it, be the best teammate that you could be to those around you. Because at the end of the day, you're here to serve, right? I used to say, we have a privilege to serve. What a privilege it is to serve customers, to serve teammates, to serve a CEO, to serve a board. What a privilege that is. But to serve your friends, and you can kind of let that kind of fly by. But when you're laying there reconciling, your life up to at that point, I was 52 when I was laying there in the bed. It puts a whole lot in perspective, Dan.
Yeah. And so you did the miracle comeback,
Yep,
overcame the impossible, went from in a coma, on life support, traked up, listening to when you started to come through, listening to conversations about the limitations that you likely had.
yeah.
Talk about hearing that and what that meant to you.
Yeah, look, at one point, I was on dialysis. My kidneys were shutting down. And I was told at one point that, that I'd be on dialysis. I'd be on dialysis the rest of my life. My kidneys have been perfect since coming out of rehab. And that's a miracle. It's a blessing. It's a miracle. Just thinking about those things, once I did come around, I realized it was going to be a different day. Now, I was motivated to get off the trach because I did have someone walk in the room and say, let me just be clear. You go home on this trach and vent, you're going to die on it. So, and the reason being is you got to be off each device for a certain period of time before, they can start to sort of allow you to breathe independently. And I'd get the anxiety and I just couldn't do it. And it just took that moment to realize I'm stronger than this. I can do this. And and in the next run at it, we were successful, and of leaving the trach out long enough for me to be able to breathe on my own. But it was the other, so that piece I overcame, but it was the pieces of, learning to walk again, learning the fundamentals of getting around the house again. They had to put a new set of stairs in to get me in and a lot of equipment in the shower. And they basically, outfit, put my house in a position where I could live and kind of come back. So yeah, all of that was daunting, but you just had so much support and so much love that you were ready to fight, and you were ready to fight for all of those that stood with you and behind you, every doctor, every nurse, every caregiver, my wife, who is absolutely my best friend and best caregiver on the planet, but every single person that stood behind you. And I was so blessed, so blessed. I had hundreds, I'd say thousands that were pulling for me to live. And when you have that, you got momentum, but you also have an obligation to do your part.
Yeah, and your wife was amazing. Although I do remember texting her to check in, and every time I did, holding my breath to see what the response was going to be. And then when you responded, it was pretty remarkable. So you get through this crazy period. I remember coming down and seeing you right after, and you were skinny. You're back at the office, which was incredible. You promoted to CAO. And it fully embraced it. I mean, getting back in the office every day, getting in early to allow time to walk to your office, but you get recovered. You had already been an incredible CHRO, one of the best we'd ever seen. Having gone through this, and then we go into COVID, how did it impact your approach to the world? How did it impact your approach to Bruce and the board? I mean, talk about that.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't know that I'm ever was or ever would be the best in the world. I mean, there's some pretty amazing talented CHROs out there, but I like to say, I held my own and had a lot of fun. When I came back, it was more of, you know, you double down on purpose. Actually, once you live through that and once you're facing the end of life, your give a darn factor about what others think kind of goes out the window. You're going to do what's right, full stop. And I like to think I did that before, and I think I did, but you don't hesitate. You sort of go in all in on behalf of those that you serve. And as I said earlier, it starts with our customer. Everyone is a customer. Starts with your customer. Starts with every teammate in the organization. Starts with your CEO, your board. And sort of that mindset of we're here to serve. Let's let it rip, right? And let's leave nothing on the field because that chance could be taken away tomorrow. And so every day you leave it on the field for those that you had the privilege to serve, and you feel pretty good about it in the end. So that was sort of the mindset. Again, that wasn't different. I was always type A. I always wanted to go in and leave it on the field, but you just have a little bit of a different. There's no hesitation, and you don't watch your words. You speak the truth on behalf of those that you're serving, and it's pretty liberating. It was helpful for me because I didn't even think about it.
And I know you became one of the very unique senior leaders who, after this, and I don't think it also existed before, but after this, you also were in trying talking about your faith at work. Was
Right.
that a change because of the inspiration having lived through this?
Yes, I think so. Right. I mean, I don't hesitate to talk about my faith pushing on it, anyone never would. But look, my faith was a huge factor in getting me through it. The power of prayer. I mean, we had communities. I mean, this sounds a little. I want to be humble about this because I don't think I deserve it. But I had communities all over the country from the different places that my wife and I have lived in. We've lived in a whole lot of different places, as you know. I moved many, many times, and the communities pulled together, and the power of prayer was a big, big part of what got me through. And as I say many times, hey, it may not be for everyone, but for me, it was. And I didn't hesitate to, because when someone asks you what got you through, you're not going to lie. You're going to say, look, I mean, a lot of things, the doctors, the nurses, the caregivers, the support network, prayer was a big part of that. And my faith was a big part of that as well.
How did You were a great head of HR before. How did it change the way you talked about leaving it all in the field and not caring about, not holding back? You were
Mm.
always a fairly courageous HR leader. You played the consigliere role as it was starting to emerge that way. Think about I guess 5 years after and the 5 years before as a CHRO. How different were you?
I'd like to say I was much more present, right? I've always worked at being present in the moment, not thinking about five different things. I mean, but the importance of, when someone comes to seek your advice or to talk to you, or quite frankly, the number of people that would come and say, I just want to share what's going on in my life because I think I can now, right? And a lot of it was health. And gosh, to not be present in a very sincere way, like there in the moment for that individual is selfish. I mean, and so multitasking doesn't make you better. It actually is disrespectful to those that need your time at that point in time. So I became very self-aware of that. And I also came to realize that, the number of times, Dan, that someone would come in and say, look, I'm dealing with something pretty heavy. It pales in comparison to what you dealt with. And I said, stop right there. The number of times I say, stop right there. What I came to realize is every single person is dealing with something. And that something at that point in time is the most important something in the world. Who in the heck am I or any of us to judge? Be there. Just be there. And that's nine times out of 10 what someone needs. And I can't tell you. I mean, it's if I look back on the times where I look at 50 different things going on and no, stop, put that aside. That 10-minute conversation is going to be the most impactful conversation you might have that day for that individual. And that's what we're here for.
I know it also, you were leading HR at one of the biggest companies in the country. We went through COVID. It was a healthcare company. And so
Mhm.
unique set of challenges. You helped encourage making some decisions around work from home as the debate raged around back to work, remote, back to office. Um, your principles and your focus on mission, doing right, continue to influence those decisions, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's amazing what the power of trust can do. When, you trust your teammates, and good things happen, right? And you you lead a lot with instinct during that period because there was no textbook for what anyone was leading through, and I don't think anyone made bad decisions. Everyone made different decisions just based on the input they had. We listened, and we listened a lot, and we made decisions along the way that never ever compromised ever on safety of teammates, on our values, never compromise on values today, tomorrow, in the future, ever. And we made decisions, and we would alter, and we would tweak, but as long as you're transparent and honest with why you're making the decisions you're making, people follow, and that was a big part of what we did. But we weren't perfect, but we did our best to listen and do what was right for our teammates, to enable them and allow them to best serve our customers. In the end, that's what we're here to do. And we had a lot of teammates that had to be on the front line. They had to be in the clinics. And we had to support that in a way that never compromised safety.
So you've had multiple careers in a way. Grew up in HR, one of the early really good HR leaders out there, and then you left HR to go run a business at an interesting time. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, taking leaving HR to run operations in different parts of organizations was by far the best thing I ever did. And at one point I thought, this is my path. This is what I want to do. I was in operations when I actually got recruited to Humana. And it was at that time that I realized, wow, it everything you do is HR. I mean, whether you're running an operation or not. And so the ability to go back in, and at the time, the CEO had the vision of, using the operational experience and, bringing it back into the world of HR as a plus. Wow. What an opportunity, right? To then I have to go from this to that, but to blend them together and lead as an operator, for the most part. It was something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed both. I mean, come on, did you enjoy being an operator, or do you enjoy HR? I enjoy them both. I mean, as long as you're making an impact, and as long as you're just as focused on purpose, you're just as focused on passion for the mission, and you're just as focused on action. Right? There's no. It's like it doesn't change. Right? It's a different muscle at a different time, but your values, your leadership skills, how you interact with people, those core sort of purpose, passion, and sort of action don't change. They don't.
Okay, so you've been a great operator, you've been a great head of HR, you became a CAO, you're now on a couple of boards. Talk about how being an operator, how being a head of HR has helped you as you approach being a board member, and then talk about just your overall approach to contributing as a board member.
Yeah, I love the board work. I mean, I'm on Republic Bank, which is a phenomenal company and organization which is a great team, great CEO, great chairperson, and great board, but just a great team. You approach it in a very pragmatic way, right? Which is, you have to dig in, you have to understand, you have to know, how to ask the right questions, but it's a pleasure when you're part of organizations that are want to do good, that have the same drive for purpose, for passion, and for action, for getting stuff done. So I'm enjoying that, and I'm on a couple of others. I'm an advisor on another board, which is a patient centric organization called My Caregorithm, which is really exciting about visualizing complex healthcare issues for patients, right, in the moment, that can really help them through challenging times. I actually just joined. I'm very, very excited about this. Bon Secours Mercy Health Board, which I haven't had my first meeting yet, but I think that's about here in the next few weeks. But very, very excited about that in the future. So, yeah, it's been good, Dan, just because you take everything that you've done over the years, and in my experience, even with our board, during my Humana time, you learn a lot about what boards are supposed to do and the role that they play, how important it is. It's a very serious role, and it should be. But you're able to take all your different experiences and hopefully make the company better. Again, one pebble in that pond, but that input and the ability to learn and to stay fresh has been really, really, really neat.
So look back a little bit. You've had an incredible incredible career. It's not done. You're still having impact. If you could write a letter to yourself the day before you stepped into your first ever CHRO role, what
Right.
advice would you give?
That's a great one. I would say never lose sight of what you're there to do. So I would say many times, and I became more emphatic about this as I've grown. And um, if you had to measure success at the end of the journey, what would that look like? It's not going to be, you know, we transitioned to Workday and put Workday, and that was great. That made the whole HR team better. I could think of many examples of things that you did that were one off, but big, but not the end. For me, it was, if you had to measure it, those that you have the privilege to serve. And when I say privilege to serve, I mean customers, I mean teammates, I mean investors and shareholders, I mean your CEO, your board, those that you had the privilege to serve are that much better. Not a ton, just a little bit better because of the work you did. You had an impact on every key constituent in the organization because of the work you did. Never lose sight of the big picture. The big picture is not HR for HR's sake. No one thinks that. I know that, but sometimes you get mired in here's my day to day focus on HR. Pull back and realize you're there to serve, and you're there to. You have to start with the customer because that defines the culture that you're trying to drive towards, right? I mean, a culture that's going to be maniacal about serving those that you had the privilege to serve, starting with the customer, and then thinking about every key constituent along the way. I probably would have been a lot more emphatic about that right out of the gate, but it just became more and more clear that your purpose is not about you. It's not about the organ or the function that you're leading. Your purpose is all about the broader context of those that you have the privilege to serve. And it gives you a whole lot of permission space when you think about it that way. And you have to. You have to.
So you were incredibly well mentored by one of the best. I mean, Jim Shanley and others.
Yeah.
Lessons early still resonate, still carry through. And which of the lessons from back in those days do you make sure to pass through as mentor to a new generation of HR leaders?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you mentioned Jim Shanley. I mean, I vividly remember conversations with Jim Shanley. In fact, I interviewed with him. He was probably one of the second people I interviewed with. And he just, in the first interview, I'll never forget it. He started peppering me on, the income statement of the company that I was working with at the time. And literally there were pretty deep questions about revenue, about EPS, and, uh, and he was sending a message at the time, which is, yes, a little bit about HR, but we need someone that understands, a little bit about business. And he was really good, and he never stopped. I mean, so he was. I mean, there's so much that I learned from that time, whether it was, every single leader that I had the privilege to work for, or which were many. I could, I'd forget, so many of them, but you're in a learning mode at that point because I was still young enough and being given a lot of opportunities to move to different parts of the country, but it was all in the spirit of growth and development. Um, and I'm thankful. I'll always be thankful for that. I mean, someone, I push leaders all the time to bet on people because someone had to bet on me. They bet on me up until the bitter end. The company bet on me when I was lying there with no chance to live in 2018. The companies before bet on me to put me in different roles that were all development, and you become better for it. So bet on people. They deserve it. Stick with them. Surround them with the right resources to be successful. But you're not taking a big risk. That's a promise.
So how, Tim, you look at the world through that lens. So we've talked about betting on people, mentorship, the importance of the humanity at work and mission and purpose. And now we're heading into this AI renaissance where, supercomputers and machine learning and just new technology is going to be able to make work better, make us more productive. But there's also a chance that it eliminates entry level roles. There's a chance that some fields are dislocated. As a people first head of HR, as a dad, now as a grandfather,
Yeah.
How do you think about what we're heading into? How does HR need to lead through this? And
Yeah.
what advice would you give that the kids in high school or the even younger about how to think about
Yeah.
their future, their career in this new world?
Yeah. Couple things. Embrace it. Embrace it with everything you've got. Be a constant learner, right? I mean, you've got to learn. I mean, don't wait for it to come to you. You've got to seek as much knowledge as you can on because it's moving fast and evolving quickly. But I'd say run towards it, right? You can sit there and you can sort of say, okay, this is going to happen, and I'm going to watch and be a fast follower. Run towards it because I actually don't look at it as, well, these jobs are gonna be eliminated. I look at it as it's an enabler, right, to better serve everything that I talked about earlier, customers, better serve teammates, better serve all your key constituencies. It's an enabler, and it's gonna allow people, yes, to gain different skills, but to do more meaningful work, to do work that's more meaningful with the different skills that you're gonna develop along the way. So, there are probably a lot of tasks out there that people are like, "Wow, so I gotta go do this again," or "This is pretty mundane." Those are not gonna exist, I don't think, in the future. I think it's gonna be an opportunity to upskill and to do more meaningful work. Not that every piece of work that the people do is not meaningful, it is, but I do think people will be much more we will be enabling people to do work at a different level. Use, the term at the top of their license, but at a different level because of AI, because of the technology that's evolving. And, in HR, you've got to use data to point you to the investments you make and the decisions you make as you invest in technology. And I think the world of HR is going to be at the forefront of that.
Does HR need to change?
There's so many amazing, talented HR teams out there. Certainly has to adapt, certainly has to continue to power up on agility, on learning agility. All of us do. I mean, that's not, pointing at it. We all do. We all have to be even that much more agile as it relates to what we're learning. And I would say not only lead change, embrace change, but be the person that understands how to navigate the organization through change, simply because it's moving at a pace that probably many of us haven't experienced, at least in my career. And so you've got to be on your game, and you have to be a lot more fluid than maybe we've had to be in the past. We've always had to be fluid, but I would say even more so today than ever. So the change is just going to be more about adaptability, I think, and not being afraid to admit you don't know what you don't know, and gaining those skills that you need, and surrounding yourself with the experts that do have the answers to some of the things that you're never going to have the answers to.
It's a fascinating inflection moment for HOs. We're dealing with AI and all of those changes. You're still doing board work, but retired from full-time CHRO. Kevin's retired, Peter Fasolo, Lucian, Mary. I mean, there's so many great heads of HR who've retired in the last few years and others coming. So there is this generational
Yeah.
transition happening as the world is going through such a massive shift.
Yes, there is. I mean, the names, the few names you just mentioned are, certainly the most world class people out there, in the field. And my bet is you're going to see a lot of us kind of hanging around doing our part to help where we can. But there are so many in this next generation of leaders that are ready to lead and step in and have the energy and the enthusiasm to do so. But yeah, it's got to there's just a whole different level of skill and adaptability that's going to be required. Um, and it takes all of us pulling together to make sure that the world of human capital and HR as we know it is at the forefront of the next generation of leaders and organizations.
Do you think the profile shifts? We've lived, Tim, and you've lived through the shift from personnel to, four different iterations. There's personnel to, hey, we don't plan the company picnic, to we want to be the tough business advisors, to there's that 10-year, dark days of we want a seat at the table. And then it really, HR sort of emerged as the consigliere and the truth
Yeah.
teller to management, which you've done as well as any. Does the does the profile of HR leaders need to shift for the next 10 years? Does it need to be someone who, the way Shanley grilled you on the business, does it need to be someone who's getting grilled on technology and innovation? Or do you
Yeah.
think the fundamentals of the role were just in
Yeah.
different times?
Yeah. I do think that, look, the need for business will never go away. I mean, and that's just a natural. You have to have a natural appetite and instinct for business and kind of understand a balance sheet, and those are just the basics. So I don't really get into that as much because you just can't be in the world of running any part of HR without that. I do think the technology acumen is gonna amp up to a different level. It already has, right? I mean, and so, your best friends in the world of work are always the CFO. I would say the CTO or the CIO is gonna be right in the same kinda category, your general counsel, because of all of the components that come with, there's obviously an ethical side of how all this comes together as well. So I would say your circle of influence, her circle of friends in the C-suite are probably going to expand. Not that it's not already there, but yeah, your knowledge, it can't just be at the superficial level. I think there's going to be a need for a more in-depth technology mindset, no different than the business mindset was 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
And now as a board member, do you have a different expectation of the heads of HR as they come into the room than maybe you would have 10 years ago?
No, I wouldn't. And again, I'm fairly new on the boards that I'm on, but no, same expectation. And the good news is I'm on really really great company boards, and that's not an issue. They have outstanding talent, and it's not. But yeah, you're going to ask the same questions because you should. The same expectations don't change, right? Because your job is to push for better.
So you have a few great kids and a beautiful little granddaughter.
Yes,
Would you encourage them to go into HR? Is that the next great frontier for them?
of course. Well, first of all, I encourage them to do anything that's going to allow them and enable them to nail purpose, nail a passion for mission. You have to have a passion for mission, whatever that is. Um, and you have to have a bias for action. Bias for action in everything you do, because purpose and passion without action, I'm not really sure what you've got. You don't have a whole lot. But yeah, I would. Oh, in a heartbeat. I mean, I get asked all the time, from many people, gosh, would you pursue HR? Absolutely. But make sure that you're pursuing it for the right reasons, right? I mean, there's so many different angles that people can take. And the world's a better place when people are, staying true to those components that I just about, purpose and mission, and just having a desire for action because they love what they do. I would absolutely encourage it because I've loved what I've had the privilege to do, and it has been a privilege beyond anything I could ever imagine. But you also want to make sure people aren't chasing what's hot at the time. Chase something that's going to really jazz you up so you can be the best that you can be. But your goal when you're in HR is you want people to come in every day, bring their entire self to work, and let it rip, full stop. And they're going to do that when they have the purpose, when they have the passion, and when they have the bias for action.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's not taught in school, right? You figure that out early. Most people fall backwards into HR.
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out early how to find that purpose and how do you get that mindset of just give it all every day.
Yeah, it's a fabulous field to be in, and I think it's only going to become more impactful, and it already is in any company. But I think it's even going to become more impactful in the years ahead. And what an exciting time! What an exciting time to be in HR. And yes, it's a daunting task to take everything that's coming at you, but grab it, right? Embrace it, run towards it. That's where the fun starts, right? Versus letting it happen to you.
Do you take that same drive? I know you have a couple of, at least one of your kids is a good athlete. You have a beautiful little baby granddaughter now. Are you as intense as a father and grandfather as you were as an ops leader and head of HR?
They'll tell you I'm type A. I mean, that's just me. That my wife will tell you I can't sit still. That's never going to change. Sitting here for an hour with you is hard. I'm ready for that. To move. But I think so. I mean, you're a little bit different when you're a dad and a husband, but a lot of those, I tried to. I don't think that I was something different when I went to work every day. Yeah, you play a different role, but at the end of the day, I couldn't shift who I was as a person, as an individual. 'Cause I'd probably get confused on what I'm supposed to be. No, so what I am who I am, and that same, they saw me enough in work mode, whether it was home on calls and, weekends, on calls. They saw me in work mode and understood that was just a way of life, but the same type of I am who I am. So you know that, man.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Listen, I'm so grateful for you being here, just in general. And I don't have to say, it has different meaning with you than it does to most people I talk to. But
Yeah.
watching your journey, watching you reach the top of the field with grace, humor, and humility was something to behold. Watching you make it through challenge, come out on the other side, get back, get promoted to CAO, continue to lead, continue to inspire, now doing it as a board member, doing it the right way, doing it as a husband, a dad, a grandfather. You are truly an inspiration. And so this is a privileged relationship that I cherish every day. And so I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for you coming on and sharing your story. I think you should hopefully inspire many. And so, Tim, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Your stories are fascinating because I think there isn't one part that defines you. It is a collection of fascinating stories, but I'm so grateful that you're here with us. So grateful that you were able to join. And for anyone listening, if you enjoyed the episode, leave a review. You can subscribe on any of your favorite podcast networks. And as always, this interview and others will be available on zrgpartners.com. Tim, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.